While I was browsing eBay looking for cool stuff to make videos about, I stumbled upon a desktop PC for just $50. Now, with a price like that, I couldn't help but think it was probably just some e-waste or maybe something that wouldn't even turn on. But hey, I'm not one to back down from a good challenge. And I haven't done a video about budget PCs in a while, so I decided to take the plunge and order it. Is this $50 PC actually worth it, or is it just a pile of junk? Let's unbox it and find out. At first glance, the appearance isn't exactly impressive. The case is heavily rusted, with some of the edges being bent out of shape. On top of that, the seller decided to throw in a generous amount of dust inside. One of the legs of the case is broken, so it doesn't exactly stand steady. Looking inside, we can see the power supply, an FSP Rater R550, which is rated for 550 watts on the label, but in reality, it's only pushing about 450 watts. Since it's not certified with any plus rating. Plus, after all these years, it's probably lost some of its efficiency. But hey, at this price, I'm not expecting much. As long as it powers on and works normally, I'd say it's totally worth it. Well, I guess it's time to power it up and see what happens. The first boot looked promising, the keyboard lit up, so the motherboard, RAM, and power supply seemed to be working fine. But then the screen didn't show anything. I thought it might be because the GPU pins were dirty, so I took it out, cleaned it, and plugged it back in. Still no luck. I was starting to get really worried. My heart was racing a bit. I tried switching to another video output, and if that didn't work, I was ready to complain to the seller. Fortunately, the screen finally came to life. Since this machine doesn't come with a hard drive, we're going to use the existing one with Windows already installed to test it. Once we boot into Windows, let's check out the detailed specs using CPU-Z.
A few moments later.
First up, we've got the Intel Core i3-3220, also known as the King of the Mid-Range, in 2012. Following the success of the Sandy Bridge generation, which brought significant improvements in performance and power efficiency, Intel introduced the Ivy Bridge series in 2012 as its successor. The name sounds similar to the previous generation because they share the same LGA1155 socket. This means if you're using a motherboard like the H61 or any other that supports this socket, you can easily upgrade from a second generation to a third generation CPU with just a BIOS update. With a starting price of $147, features 2 cores and 4 threads, a clock speed of 3.3 GHz, a 3 MB L3 cache, power consumption of just 55 watts. Supports DDR3 RAM at 1600 MHz. The graphics card here is the GT1032GB. Released in 2017, after NVIDIA launched the GTX 10 series with Pascal architecture and high-end models, they surprisingly introduced a budget-friendly option for the mainstream market. The GeForce GT 1030, the 2GB GDDR5 version in its low-profile form, is especially suited for mini cases or systems with limited space. This card is equipped with the GP108 chip, built on a 14nm process featuring 384 CUDA cores, a base clock of around 1227 MHz, and can boost up to 1468 MHz. It comes with 2 GB of GDDR5 VRAM on a 64-bit memory bus, delivering significantly better performance compared to the DDR4 version. One of the major advantages of the low-profile GT 1030 is its extremely low power consumption, just about 30 watts, and it doesn't require an additional power connector, making it compatible with almost any standard office power supply. As for connectivity, the card typically includes HDMI and DVI ports, which are more than enough for basic display needs. Additionally, this PC is equipped with 2 4GB DDR, 3 RAM sticks running at 1600 MHz, totaling 8 GB in dual channel mode. While this isn't exactly overkill, it's more than enough to handle basic esports titles comfortably. During the 2011 to 2013 period, when Intel launched the Sandy Bridge and later the Ivy Bridge CPUs, they also released several supporting chipsets, with the H61 being one of the most popular choices for the mainstream market. The ESC H61 motherboard is a prime example from that era. Simple, durable, and cost-effective, making it suitable for both office users and entry-level gamers. The ESC H61 uses the LGA1155 socket and supports Intel's 2nd and 3rd gen CPUs, from Pentium and Core i3 to Core i7. Despite being a budget option, the H61's compatibility is impressive. By just updating the BIOS, you can easily upgrade from a Sandy Bridge CPU to an Ivy Bridge CPU. In terms of hardware, the ESC H61 typically features 2 DDR3 RAM slots with a maximum support of 16 GB, running at 1333/1600 MHz, perfect for basic needs. It includes standard connectivity options like VGA, LAN, multiple USB ports, and a PCI Express X16 slot for a discrete graphics card. Additionally, there are PCI and PCIe X1 slots for adding expansion cards. A big plus for the H61 is its durability and stability. With its simple motherboard design and easily replaceable components, we kick things off with League of Legends on max settings. The budget PC is just strong enough to handle basic gameplay, but it clearly shows its limits in heavy action. The processor is working around 70 to 90%, with temperatures hovering at 55 degrees Celsius and clock speed stable at about 3.3 GHz. That's enough to manage the core mechanics of a MOBA, but when multiple effects stack up, it's nearing its max capacity. Meanwhile, the graphics card is barely breaking a sweat, running at only approximately 37% load, 50 degrees Celsius, and consuming about 16.5 watts. But in large team fights with multiple ability effects, FPS can drop to around 40, making gameplay less fluid and slightly harder to react accurately. Moving on to CS2, on low settings, the data really highlights the age of this setup. The processor is running at around 63% load, but it's likely that one core is maxed out, preventing FPS from climbing any higher. Temperatures are cool at about 53 degrees Celsius, and the clock speed sits around 3.29 GHz, near the ceiling for this older architecture. Power consumption is low, around 16 watts, but single-core performance is already outdated for modern gaming. The GPU barely feels the strain, using roughly 43% of its capacity, showing that the CPU is the real bottleneck here. Temps hover around 57 degrees Celsius, and VRAM usage is close to its limit at approximately 1.98 GB of 2 GB. In scenes with smoke or lots of effects, frame drops are inevitable due to limited memory bandwidth. Power draw is just approximately 19 watts, typical of an entry-level low-consumption card, but that also caps the FPS potential. System RAM is using 6.7 GB out of 8 GB, leaving enough room for light background tasks like music. Overall, FPS averages around 40, playable for casual sessions, but far from smooth for competitive play, especially if you're used to 60+ FPS. In Minecraft without shaders, the performance bottleneck is clearly on the CPU, typical for Java-based games. The processor is running at 99% load, holding around 3.29 GHz, the max for this older architecture. With stable temps near 57 degrees Celsius, with the CPU fully loaded, every task, from world rendering, mob AI, chunk calculations, to redstone processing, is pushing the processor to its limit, leaving no room to boost FPS further. Meanwhile, the GPU is barely stressed, hovering around 32% load, 55 degrees Celsius, and consuming roughly 17 watts. Since Minecraft without shaders mostly renders simple block geometry, the graphics card isn't challenged, and VRAM usage stays under 1 GB. This clearly shows the GPU isn't the limiting factor here. Averages around 50 to 60, playable on a 60 Hz monitor, but heavy movement through new chunks or loading dense areas can cause dips due to CPU saturation. Overall, this $50 PC delivers a basic playable experience for esports titles, which is pretty impressive given the price. For more demanding games like CS2 or Minecraft though, a CPU upgrade would be necessary to fully match the capabilities of the graphics card. Considering we only spent $50 and still got usable performance, that's a pretty solid deal. As for long-term durability, only time will tell. That wraps up this build and test for our $50 PC. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.